right. Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. It's the week before Memorial Day weekend. So we're going to finish this week strong, but we're going to start it off even stronger. We got a special guest here. And just in case this is your first time joining us, this is our speaker series. It's the last one of the school year. The very last one. Can you believe it? School is almost over. Our speaker series, let me tell you, we have experts on our speaker series, people from our community, people who have the expertise in certain subject matters that we feel that parents need more information on. And today, we have the honor of having my good friend, Miss Emily Freitag. Did I say it right, Emily?
You said it perfect.
All right. I have so much respect for Emily. She's so passionate about education. And just when you find people that just want to do the right thing by children, like you just cannot let them get away from you. So, you stuck with the parents of Nashville Propel.
Oh, lucky me. Lucky me.
And so Nashville Propel, we are parents requiring our public education system to lead. And we represent our most struggling parents who live in our most struggling communities who have children who are zoned or attend to our lowest performing schools in the state of Tennessee. And that's in the 5% of districts in the state of Tennessee. And so we are here with Emily. Emily, I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself. But first, wait a minute. Y'all like and comment and share and all of that stuff. Make sure you welcome Emily. So if you're getting on here, say welcome Emily. Make sure she feels good about being here. And make sure you ask her questions because she's a plethora. That means she got a whole lot of expertise. So Emily, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be with y'all tonight. And I am a Nashville parent myself. My oldest will start at Waverly Belmont Kindergarten in the fall. And he is right now tricycling down the hill in front of our house very quickly. And I am so glad to be with you. I am an educator. I taught 7th grade math for several years, and then I have worked preparing teachers to teach, and then I worked at the state of Tennessee for many years, and now I work for an organization called Instruction Partners, and we help schools make sure that they're given their best to every single student. And we work in about 120 school systems and 8 states, and headquarters right here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow. Hey, y'all doing some great things. But tonight we're gonna talk about what we keep hearing on the street. We're gonna talk about this tutoring. So at MNPS they have the promising scholars, and I've been asking for weeks and weeks. I'm like, well, what's the promise? Whoa, what's the surprise? What's the promise? Right? But we're gonna talk about high dose tutoring, and we're hearing that all across the country, right? But parents like me, like where we come from, we don't know what that means. We just know about the word tutoring, and tutoring is great, and we support tutoring. But I think sometimes we don't understand what it should look like, especially when we've been given certain things, right? Many of us have gotten tutoring for our children because we want the very best and we want our children to succeed.
Yeah.
And I liken tutoring to a supplement, right? Like sometimes we may not have enough vitamins in our bodies, and we may go get supplements. But the key to that is making sure that we get the supplements from the right place, supplements that are approved, and supplements that are going to be really good for us. So we're going to talk about the high dose tutoring. And so, Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can help us to understand. And then we're going to come back and ask questions. And we're going to walk out of this thing today understanding what our children should get.
Sounds good. Well, I will do my very best. And I love interaction. So please, y'all, keep those questions coming. So I am going to share with y'all what I know about high dosage tutoring wearing 2 different hats. One is from the work we do at Instruction Partners with schools. The other is that I am on the advisory board of a group called NSSA, which is the National Student Support Accelerator. And I'm going to share my screen just to show you all a couple of things. Let me make sure There we go. Share. We practiced this, I promise. Okay. So there we go. I think you all can see my screen now. So this group called the National Student Support Accelerator is an organization that is all about high impact tutoring. And what we are trying to do is pull together the research on what kind of features of tutoring programs make the tutoring really strong, and then toolkits for people who are starting tutoring programs, because you're right about this being a buzzword, right? And a lot of people are starting tutoring programs right now. And then over time, we're also going to be putting together a database of different kinds of tutoring programs that gives more information about what we know about them. So those are the kind of hats I'm going to be wearing in the conversation today. And I'm going to share with you, I think I can put this in the chat so you all can have access to it also. I'm going to share this document that has information that I'm going to be pulling from, but I'll put it on my screen right here as well. Can you see that, Sonia?
I can see your screen now.
Okay, great. So let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this, I'm going to walk you through the kind of 10 things that we know about what makes for strong tutoring. So the first is frequency. So people call it high dosage tutoring for a reason. The research out there has found that tutoring is most likely to be effective when it is at least 3 times per week. So it's got to be frequent. Second is group size. It's got to be small. One-on-one is really good. Up to 3 or 4 students at a time has been shown to be good. But if you're beyond 4, it's really a different thing. It's not tutoring anymore. And that requires more skill to do it well. But one-on-one is likely to be the best. Okay, so we've got frequency and group size. Next question is, who should tutor? Who should the tutors be? So this is interesting because tutoring is different than teaching. Teaching requires you to manage a lot of different kids with a lot of different needs all at the same time. And to be a good teacher, you have to understand a lot about your subject and a lot about how kids learn. Tutoring is a little different because you can get so close, you can get one-on-one. So the research has found a wide variety of people can be effective tutors. Great teachers are also great tutors. So there's a real push to have teachers do a lot of tutoring, and I understand where that comes from. But paraprofessionals are great tutors, and volunteers, college students, even high school students can be great tutors. The key to being a great tutor is you got to love kids and you've got to know more than your students do. And if you have those 2 things, you can be a good tutor. So tutoring is interesting because a lot of people think about how do we have a broad range of tutors and almost make it like a step into the teaching profession. And it seems like that can be very effective. Studies have found that tutoring can be effective in all subjects and grade levels, even for high school students who have fallen quite far behind. But the studies do suggest that in the early grades, reading-focused tutoring, and then in the later grades, math-focused tutoring can be even more effective. So it's not the kind of thing where it only works for math or only works for reading. It can be effective everywhere. But especially, it seems like in early grades reading, it can be an important part of a system of making sure all students can read. Not the only part. You've got to also have good day-to-day teaching, but it can be a part of that. What else do we know about tutoring? We know that tutoring programs that have some kind of data that they're using to understand what kids need do better. We know that tutoring programs that have consistency in relationships do better than tutoring programs where you might have one tutor one week and another tutor the next week. So the relationship aspect of tutoring is really part of the secret sauce of what makes it work. We know that tutoring that uses good curriculum is more effective than tutoring that doesn't have a curriculum. And the very best would be if the school has a good curriculum and that tutoring is focusing on that. There's some debate on whether in school or after school is better, but there's definitely evidence that when it's scheduled into the school day, you can see more consistency. Both online and in person seem to work, although for younger kids, in person better. And tutoring is both good for students who want to accelerate and move forward and take on more advanced learning, and also for students who need some real support. The key is to make sure it doesn't feel like a punishment or that there's a negative stigma. Like sometimes in elementary schools, it's like, oh, I'm in the blue group or you're in the red group, and there's a stigma. You don't want tutoring to feel like it's something that only the kids who are behind get. Last thing I will say is duration does seem to matter. So having 4 weeks of intensive tutoring is probably better than nothing, but having like 16 weeks or more of tutoring is when you're hitting that sweet spot. So ideally, a tutoring program is lasting for a good 4 to 6 months. So that is what we know from the research about tutoring and what makes tutoring stronger. I will also just say that tutoring is kind of as good as the hype in a bunch of ways. There's a lot of programs that are not, right? Like we have these buzzwords or these big ideas. And I think that tutoring is really, it's an old solution, right? People have been tutoring and turning to tutoring for ages. It works in many different countries. It works in many different grade levels and subjects. And as I said, it's not like teaching. To be a good tutor, you don't have to know a lot about teaching. It seems like the secret sauce has something to do with that really close relationship between an adult or an older student who cares about a child. So just having that relationship creates this connection and sort of accountability in your life. And I think that that's part of the power of tutoring. And then the other part of tutoring seems to be the individualization that you can achieve, right? You can get really close to kids and really understand. You can watch them do a math problem or watch them read and really understand for that individual child what might be going on. So tutoring is very powerful when it is done in a very high intensity, consistent way, connected to a good curriculum over time.
That's great. That's powerful. And you put me in mind of something during the pandemic. There were a few parents that reached out to me personally. For some reason, they thought that our organization might offer tutoring. And, you know, I just can't turn somebody down when they're screaming for help like that. Yeah. So I remember hollering upstairs at my girls. My daughters, they're very bright. And I said, hey, who can tutor something? And Trinity, who's a senior, just graduated. She said, I don't mind tutoring. So there was a third grader who was struggling in math. And, it was during a time where COVID was really like, we were seeing that upward trajectory. And I was afraid, but, we did the whole social distancing thing at the table, and the masks, the gloves, and all those things. And I just could not see not helping that parent and that baby. Yeah. So we brought the baby over. The baby got the tutoring. And so just a couple of days ago, I got a message that the little girl ended up making a B in math, and that she understood everything. And they were like showing appreciation to my daughter. And when you said relationship, that just brought that to mind because my daughter would play with her and talk to her and listen to her. And this little girl wants to be a teacher. And she's just so bubbly. And so when you said relationship, that just took me back. So thank you for sharing all those wonderful things about tutoring. So what I heard you say, it was frequency, data, and group size, consistency. Wrote down a few things. Let's see, what was the curriculum? Great curriculum. Of course, the relationship part stood out to me.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the group size.
Sure.
It don't matter if you don't mind. And so you're saying that, one-on-one is great. You know, 1 to 3, that's pretty good. And then over that, we have to be really cognizant. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there are a fair number of studies on this because, if you're trying to make money go farther, you're going to load up those class sizes so you have more kids in them, right? And you want every kid that can benefit from tutoring to be a part of it. So you really do want as many students to be able to be served. It does seem like anything over 4 sees a diminishing return. So you have less results. One-on-one is the best. It's going to come down to how many great tutors can a program find. And, a year ago, that was an easier thing than it is now. The economy is everybody's hiring, right? There's a lot of demand for talent. And so I would take good tutoring that's high dosage and consistent and curriculum based with, 3 or 4 kids over only serving a couple of students. But you really don't want it to go above 4.
Gotcha. And so we're starting right here in our district. We're starting tutoring. I think last time I checked, there was like roughly 14,000 children signed up for tutoring. And so that sounds like it's going to be more than the 1 to 4.
It's a lot of tutors.
That's a lot of tutors.
But remember, if they're doing multiple rounds in a day, you might be able to make that happen. It's how do you get the intensity so that you have 3 times a week with the small group size? You need a lot of people.
Yeah. So, I'm hoping that someone from the district is listening and, can respond so that parents know exactly what the promise is. Like, what are these things? And parents, you should be asking this question. The purpose of tonight is to make sure that you're making informed decisions and that you can ask informed questions. I know a lot of you guys ask a lot of questions, but we want to make sure we're getting to the meat of it and asking the right questions. Yes, it's fine to know what they're going to have for lunch for the day, right? That's great. But we need to know how many people are going to be in their groups when they're getting this tutoring. So number 1, the question you should be asking is this a under 1 to 4? So is it 1 to 3? And then how many rounds of tutoring, will the children be getting per week?
Yeah. So, and you want that to be 3 or higher. You want frequency.
So I'm writing this down. How many rounds? I'm going to ask 2. How many rounds are there? Great question. Let's see. Jacqueline says, hi there. Hi, Jacqueline. Let's see if we got any questions from the audience so far, because this is a lot of information. We need to make sure we get this. And so we're going to take our time and make sure we're asking all of the questions.
Can I'll say one more thing that I think y'all might want to ask about. So I talked about curriculum, and it's important that there's a good curriculum in place. Because we've had this conversation a couple times, but I think that there is a sense of if my child has missed some school, or I think that my child might be behind, then I want to go back. I want to make sure my child doesn't get left behind. I think this is a dangerous thing to think about. And instead, we need to say, are they going to push to be on grade level? Because you want tutoring. You don't want tutoring to assume that there are problems, and just in case there are problems, let's start way behind grade level. You want tutoring to start on grade level.
Ooh. We did talk about this.
We did talk about this. Yes.
We talked about this. Yeah. So Emily was talking about how we want to push rigor. Like, I know you guys hear that word, that rigorous. We want to be intense and intentional about getting our children beyond grade level. Yeah.
Yes. Just today, this group called Zern Math came out with a bunch of data with this group TNTP, and they found, sometimes you might hear the word remediation, right? Mm-hmm. Where we got to stop and go back and remediate. And actually what we find is that this is this can be a very damaging practice. Because what happens is if your child it's stop and go back, but other children are moving forward, that gap really widens. And actually what we find is when you start moving forward, and especially in tutoring, because you've got that one-on-one dynamic, so you can find the places where there's some support that might be needed, that you actually see students move forward much faster. So I think this question of, is my child going to be getting on grade level instruction, is an important question for parents to be asking, particularly because, you know what else this study found? Children of color in particular were more likely to be remediated, even if they had already mastered grade level content. And so really making sure that the message from parents is, I expect my child to be pushed to be on grade level, I think will push teaching into the right zone, as opposed to the question of, how do I know if my child won't be left behind? Because guess what? Kids rise. They learn. They get there when they are pushed. But if we don't push them, then they're not going to have that opportunity.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that. Just from my story of my son, what he was getting, and us, being afraid to put him in a situation that was more rigorous. I hear parents say that sometimes. They're like, if you take your child to this school, it's going to be harder. You want it to be harder because, like you said, they will step up to the plate. And you know what? That we have to give them the credit for the work that they put in to get themselves there too. And I can speak for that. My son, when I put him in a situation, it was hard at first, right? It was like, many tears, but he has risen to the occasion. So parents, take this advice. You talking to a mama that I was afraid to do that, right? I was afraid to put him, like, but he doesn't know. They got him there, and they were intentional with that. So make sure that's happening not only in tutoring, but when you go to school.
But in school, yes, exactly. Yeah.
When you go to school.
And I think it's important to also just note that, like, I believe in tutoring, and I think tutoring can do an enormous amount of good. But I also think tutoring does not make up for not getting what you need in school. We need great school and tutoring as a part of it. We don't need the bread and butter that kids are getting in their daily class to not work and try to make up for it with tutoring. We need good core instruction with tutoring as a support, or as you said, as a supplement.
And that excites me when you say that, because I'm imagining what can be. I mean, it almost making me tear up, because we don't have to lose this battle, Emily. We don't have to lose this. This is an opportunity for us to really change the game for children with all of the funding. We need a win. We all need a win with this. And I think that that's what we should be headed. Like, we should be focusing on getting a win and making this a win for our children. One of the things I wanted to ask you about too, you talked about needing 16 weeks. And so we know that tutoring in our district, and I can only speak for our district because that's what I know, there's not going to be 16 weeks of tutoring because the summer doesn't go that long. So is this our only chance to get it right?
No, I think I don't know the latest about what Metro is planning. So to be very clear, I'm not speaking from any specific information, but I know a lot of school districts are thinking about how they embed tutoring in the school year as well. So I would say the summer is just the start, and it's an important part of the start, but it cannot be the finish. And so the next several years, as you said, are an incredibly important opportunity for schools and really for American education to pave a new way. And I love your thought here, Lemuel. I mean, absolutely. We know every child is capable of greatness, and we know we need the greatness of every single child. And I think that we're at a moment when schools have a different kind of resourcing than they've had in a long time. And we have some high expectations for ourselves right now and what we need to be able to achieve, because we know that there's a lot of students who didn't have a smooth year this past year. So this is the kind of work schools always need to be good at. They always need to be good at supporting students who might have some unfinished learning and need additional support. And we have the opportunity here to really find a way to make that happen.
And so parents, you should be asking, like, not just about this summer, but whether or not we're going to embed tutoring into the school year. And what does that look like? You don't start taking a vitamin and take it for 6 weeks and think that it gave you everything that you need to give. No, you got to take that multivitamin every day, every morning, consistently. Every morning, 9 o'clock, get up, take your vitamin, drink your orange juice. Same thing with tutoring. Ask the question, will this be embedded into our school year? As you're talking, Emily, see, sometimes we as parents, nobody really shares a lot of things with us like this, right? And so things are done to us instead of with us. And so, and sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes I think that people just don't realize that maybe we just don't understand the whole thing. And as I think back on Trinity, my daughter, her school years at Liberty when she first started, there would be times during like right after school, like between 3 and 4, that they would get tutoring. Right. So as a parent, I'm just like, hey, they're getting some additional help with something they may not have, finished doing class, not realizing that people were already doing this. And it may be some of the reason why some of these schools are getting the results that they're getting. They just need to probably, up the ante on it. But we know that it does work.
Sure. Yes. I think you make a good point, because people call a lot of things tutoring. And like, I remember when I was in high school, I would say I'm staying for tutoring, but really I was just going because I had a couple of questions about the lesson that day. That is not high dosage tutoring. High dosage tutoring is like a regular part of your schedule of your week. It is something that you are doing consistently. You're seeing the same person and they are accountable to you. That's a different thing. But you're right. We call a lot of things tutoring. And so I think it's good that parents will know what to ask for when we really are talking about the kind of tutoring that makes a difference.
Lemuel has some great questions. He says, how do we leverage the technology we use during the pandemic to benefit students and families moving forward?
It is a great question. I mean, we've all learned so much. And I think about things like parent-teacher conferences. And I'm like, are those ever going to be in person again? Or are we doing those on Zoom forever from here? Because I'll tell you, it was far more convenient for me. I think that the technology is here to stay. I mean, look at what we're doing right now, right? When it comes to tutoring, there's a lot of things to study about how technology works and doesn't. Some people are trying blended versions of tutoring where you might have kind of certain computer videos you watch, but then some things that you're doing one-on-one with a tutor. I think we're early in learning what works and what doesn't when it comes to the technology. What I've seen so far makes me think that for our younger babies, we should be getting them in person. And we should do more of this learning in the middle school and the high school, because I do think that their fluency with the technology is a bit different. And especially when you're doing things like learning to read, there are some kind of things that we really want to make sure are happening in person. But I think there's a lot we can do with technology. And I think I don't think we're ever going to go back to life without it.
We cannot return to business as usual. We cannot do that. We have got to be innovative. When I think about my children who have been in private school early on, like when they went to school, they got a device. So a lot of people are saying like private schools didn't miss a beat. Yeah, they didn't, because they already had the technology.
Yeah.
And then when they did have to close down the school for a COVID case, they didn't miss a beat because they were already doing it, guys. So, we can't get mad at the private schools because they were innovative about it. But you know what? I want to move on to something else real quick. Doesn't matter
who's doing the tutoring. So teachers have slightly stronger results in tutoring than people who are not teachers. Paraprofessionals have stronger results than not teachers, but there are strong results with all kinds of people as tutors. So I kind of come back to this. 1, do you love the kid you're tutoring? And 2, do you know more than the kid you're tutoring knows? If you can answer yes to those 2 things, then you can be a good tutor.
Yeah, my daughter Trinity, good. She's a good tutor. And she loved doing it, and she knew her stuff in math, and she had had the type of math that the child had, been experiencing, and she was familiar with the concepts and the delivery, and she did it. And the child, she had the child teaching her, as a fun thing before she left the house, and it was just amazing to watch. So I'm just wondering about, does it matter like who? And we talked about the how. Does it? I mean, we talked about when, but is it how matters, right?
Yeah. I mean, this again is some of that magic of the individual work that happens. So I taught 7th grade math, and 7th grade's like proportions, and you're getting into ratios and positive and negative numbers. And when I was teaching a class of 30 kids, positive and negative numbers, I had to really know my stuff. I had to know what's going on in the heads of my students right now. What might be things that are confusing them about this lesson? Couple years ago, I met someone at a coffee shop, and he needed some tutoring on positive and negative numbers. And I just sat next to him while he did some problems, and I could very quickly see what he was doing well and what were challenges for him. So it was easier, right? It was easier to identify when you're in that one-on-one setting. And then I just tried different things, right? I would show him how I was thinking about it, or we would try doing the problem a different way. Like, I didn't have to be methodical about it all. I just had to be committed that we were going to figure it out together, which it sounds like your daughter Trinity did really well too. So I agree with Rhea. I think Rhea, I'm sure I might not have said Rhea. Good. Glad to say your name properly. I think a lot of teens are great tutors. I think if we had like an expectation in our country that young people did some tutoring, we would find a great pipeline to some great teachers. And interestingly, sometimes people who struggled to learn something themselves the first time make really great tutors, because they have been there. They've had to find their way out of that forest. So I don't even think like students with perfect grades make great tutors. I think you just have to know more than the kid does about the thing that you are tutoring them on.
Well, I'm gonna tell y'all something. Y'all do not want me tutoring y'all's children.
Are you not committed, or you don't love them, or you don't know more?
I can tutor them on how to build a movement. That's about it. But when it comes to other stuff, they might know more than me. I'm 45 years old, and I done lost it. You don't use it. I think one of the other questions that I have about like the who, are we even looking at like when districts bring people in, organizations, like is there any worry that we should have that, I don't know, that the relationship is not there, right?
Well, I would certainly say, what are you doing to make sure that tutors are good at building relationships? Because you can do lots of things to do that. You can select for it. You can ask when you're selecting tutors, tell me about a relationship you've built over time. You can train people on relationships. You can monitor whether they have good relationships. You know, someone can be calling tutors and saying, how are your relationships going with each individual child, and really holding people accountable to that. So I do think that making sure that whoever the tutoring program is really thinking about relationships is very important.
Marnisha says, oh, they switching on me. Torvis says, with all the learning loss, the governor said that third grade kids not on level must report to the third grade or to summer school or agree to tutoring. Yeah, that's in 2022. If it's not high dosage tutoring, it's just another play on words. They have the money, so we must demand a frequency and a duration and the quality of tutoring. Thanks, Emily. Great.
Yeah. No, that's a great comment. And let's remember, like, tutoring isn't the way to meet that law alone. The way to meet that law is great school and tutoring as a part of that, right? But nothing is going to replace the time that your kindergartner spends in their reading block and your first grader spends learning phonics, actually having a good experience. And that good, they call it core instruction. Sometimes people call it tier 1. That base has to be really good. And tutoring should be a way that you make sure all students get access to that, but it can't replace good school.
You cannot eat bad and take vitamins.
Oh, what? Here you go.
Healthy. You've got to eat well and take the supplement, the vitamins.
I mean, you're making me feel bad about my parenting right here. You know what we do in my house? My kids they say, Mama, I want second dessert. And we give them one of those gummy vitamins. I know, we make it second dessert. That's what our vitamins are. But you're right. If they've had...
That sounds like me with my hair and nail vitamins.
Mama, I want second dessert. But you're right. If we had chicken nuggets for dinner every night and they had second dessert, they wouldn't be so healthy.
It's too cute. You know, let's see. What did Rhea say? She said bars. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, this is great conversation. You know, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, the data. So we have children who are entering into tutoring this summer, and it sounds like the tutoring should kind of be driven a little bit by the data. So knowing where that child is, and then, you know, we've been talking about personalized learning plan. We've worked a lot with you, and we continue to work with you on that. And so that's basically what we're talking about. You got to know where your child is. That's great. We've got a dashboard, right? And shout out to the district for the dashboard, but the plan. So when we have that data, when we see map and we see all of these Tennessee Red and we see these scores, there should be a plan wrapped around that child starting at the beginning of tutoring. Am I right? And that plan should include what we're going to do and what the end game should be. We all seen the vendors end game. What's the end game?
Yeah. Oh man, I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm going to try to not go so nerdy on you. I think that what's interesting about tutoring is that you can have like your map report and you can look at all kinds of data, but you know, when I was sitting next to my tutee working on positive and negative numbers, what really helped me was just watching him do some problems. It really gave me a better diagnosis than a report that just told me he doesn't know how to solve positive and negative numbers, because I could watch what he was doing and I could understand kind of what he understood and what he didn't about it. And I think that sometimes the conversations we have about data lead us to think that we need more reports
We don't.
And actually, I think sometimes we just need more conversations, or we
Yes.
need more examples, or we need to call parents and ask, what's he doing well at home? Like, I think the way we need to think about data is bigger than the way we've been thinking about it, but also maybe actually fewer tests and more just problems and seeing how kids are doing with those. Because I do think kids really feel the effect of taking a lot of tests that they know they don't do very well on. And I think it really hurts their sense of belonging and their sense of their ability to succeed. Like, I know if somebody puts a test in front of me that I don't do very well, I don't feel very good after it. So I think we have to, I believe deeply in accountability. I believe we have to know whether kids have learned things or not. I think that accountability is important up and down the system, and for myself, right? Like, I want to know, but I think that the kind of data that tutors like actually can use is often just watching students read or watching students do a problem in a really focused way.
Yeah, it's like I always say that the data is important. I hear you saying that too, but when we don't do the other things, say if you go to the doctor, they don't just look at lab work, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
They listen to your lungs and your bowel sounds. They palpate your pulses.
They ask what you ate last week. You know?
Right. You know, tell me, you know, is it a sharp pain? Is it a dull pain?
Right.
And what I hear you saying is it's not, the data is good. And that's what it's not just about the data. It's the subjective and the objective. What do you see? What do you hear that person saying?
Yeah, it's all data, right?
All data.
Yeah,
all data. Thank you for that. And Rhea said less standardized testing. I think that we have enough, and maybe we don't need to add more. But MAP, you know, that's fine. You know, there may be some. That's a whole nother discussion. There are some better assessments to do in Tennessee Ready. But also, what I could hear you saying is, are we not focused on what we need to do to make sure that the child has the information so that they do test well? We're just saying, oh, they got to do good on tests. They got to do it on tests. But are we ensuring that we're looking over their shoulder and they have it?
Yeah. And that's the power that tutoring offers, because that small group setting allows the tutor to just sit there and watch 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 students do their work. And you can really quickly see what's really going on and what support kids really need.
Right. Yeah. So we're not saying less standardized testing. We're saying get them ready so that they can't even, I mean, we're expecting them to do something that we haven't even prepared them to do. Right.
Yeah. I mean, in some cases, I'm for less standardized tests too, right? Like, I think you do need the state test. You need like an annual something.
Yes.
And then the MAP test is often used as what they call a universal screener to just sort of get a pulse on how is this child doing relative to their peers. That can be helpful for all kinds of reasons. But if you just took that MAP test and you said, for everything that this child is a red or a yellow on, I'm going to just focus there, you might be missing.
You're going to miss
like something important. So it's almost like that universal screener gives a first impression, but then you need a deeper diagnosis.
Do some more investigating.
Yeah. And that deeper diagnosis is not more standardized tests. That's more conversation. That's more watching students work. I think we do run a real risk when schools really layer lots of different assessments on top of it. So it's like you've got your MAP and your state tests, and we're going to do an interim assessment, and we're going to bring in the benchmark. And by the way, we've got to add this other thing. That's when I think we really are
wearing them out.
Wearing everyone out.
Yeah, wearing them out.
And especially if you don't do anything with the data, right? Like it's gotta be worth the squeeze.
Yeah, I've heard a child, as a matter of fact, John Little's child, Little John was at this panel of students who were talking about education. And one of the comments that he made, he said, they give us a test, and then they don't even prepare us for the test, and they take the test, and then we get in trouble if we make a bad grade on it. And so we could hear the urgency and the the fear in his voice.
Sure.
Like, he's like, I'm doing the best that I can, but nobody's letting me get what I need to get before testing me. And then you say that I'm not doing good. So we got to give these children what they need so they can even take the test.
And I mean, kids and all of us, we take a lot of, we put a lot of stock in what people say about our ability to learn. Mm-hmm. And if you keep getting bad grades, you start to think it's you.
You do.
And I think that I think we have to remember just how powerful expectations are. Mm-hmm. The other thing I kind of like about tutoring is, honestly, it usually doesn't have a grade associated with it. So it keeps kids in that learning space. It feels a little safer, maybe.
Yes.
Than school sometimes feels.
Yeah. And you know, Ria's got on here more goals. Mm-hmm. What we should be asking what we have to celebrate. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have anything to celebrate, we got a problem.
Yeah.
You know, what is that child? So you do have, so that's why we want the personalized learning plan. What are the goals for the week? What are the priorities? And then what do we want to celebrate?
Yeah.
And you know, I don't think that that's being tracked enough in school.
Yeah. I mean, I also think it's maybe just not being done enough, not just in schools, but everywhere. Like, we all need a lot of positive affirmation in our life to risk learning, right? Because it's scary. Trying something new is really scary. And so I just think, like, we need a high volume of reinforcement and praise and confidence and affirmation that we can do it and we are worth it. But that also has to be alongside really worthy work, right? Like, you talk about your son going to a harder school and it feeling really hard. I think we also sometimes have this problem where we over celebrate kids for not doing really hard things, right? Where it's like, oh, look at you did something very easy. Kids know, they know. We got to give them hard, good work, and we got to praise the heck out of them for every step of that journey.
Yes, and they step up. They will step up to the plate. It breaks my heart to see parents in IEP meetings and children can't read. Mm-hmm. And so it just breaks my heart because 99% of all of us can be taught how to read. Definitely. And so it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's because we have low expectations also. When you give an 8th grader a Bernstein Bears book, you have low expectations for that child. And we've got to set the bar high, and we got to celebrate. Because there's a lot of children there. There's a lot to celebrate with them, right? But we've got to set those personalized goals for them so that they have something, so that they can see that there's hope, so that they can get some momentum, right? When you celebrate, and I lead with this with our team. We're gonna celebrate what you want it to be. We're gonna celebrate that thing because it gives you momentum.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah.
Yes.
Upward spiral, right?
Upward spiral. And so Cliff says, especially our children, they need adults that love and respect to speak life in them. Yeah. Stop looking at them as struggles and bad people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love this conversation. Are there other questions about the data or the research or?
For me, I do want to ask another question. I didn't want to hog all of it, y'all. I don't want to hog all the questions. One of the other things that you talked about, and I'm going to go here because I kind of made a little tweet too. You talked about, you said curriculum delivery. We talked about the data. We talked about duration. We talked about, I think we hit everything. We hit everything.
You know what? One other question that I would just be asking in Metro, but everywhere too. I would be asking about the diversity of tutors.
Ooh.
I would be saying getting diverse tutors is a really good way to get a more diverse workforce.
Wow.
And so I would think a lot about like, how are you going to make sure that our tutors are representative of our population and of our student demographics?
Wow, yes, because children need to see.
They do.
They need to see. They need to see diversity. They need to be around different cultures, but they also need to see people who look like them in those tutoring situations. That gives them hope.
Very much.
Pride. So yeah, I think that's a great question. And you know what? I think another thing that I would ask y'all is ask for a schedule of the day. Like you need your proof. And then whatever is on that agenda for the day, ask about the details or examples of the tutoring that they're going to get, through the week. Like, can you show me an example? And then ask what kind of things you can do at home to support those things. And if you don't know how to deliver those things, then ask, can you sit in and see how the things are being delivered to your child? You have a right to do that. You can sit back there. I've gone to my son's school and behind him in the science class or social studies somewhere. I did that. I also was able to identify that he was having an issue because I stood behind him and watched. So there's ways for you to help and get an understanding of what your child needs.
Absolutely.
But let's see, we got 10 minutes. Let's see. How much is high dosage tutoring? Where do you get these services? All right, let's talk about that.
I like it.
You know what? This is what
let's make this a quiz. We should make this one a quiz.
We should make it a quiz because there's some parents that didn't sign their children up for tutoring in the district. So how much? What's usually the cost around there? Do we know that? And
how much cost? Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. Well, so this varies a lot, but parents, you shouldn't have to pay for it is the bottom line, especially in these next few years. You need to say, I expect that you're using some of this money to support high dosage tutoring for my child. I thought you were asking how much, like how many times per week. And that's what I was going to say. Let's make that a quiz. What is the minimum frequency that you should have for tutoring? Let's see who heard that part.
I know the answer to this one.
You know the answer, don't you say? Okay, how many times per week should your child be getting tutoring in order for it to be high dosage?
I got a prize too. If somebody gets it.
She's sweetening the deal. Is it second dessert? Is that what you're given?
I have a Nashville Propel ink pen.
I'm gonna give a vitamin subscription. Let's see.
Let's see. Anybody answer?
Not yet.
Not yet. Y'all making me anxious. Come on, answer.
Yay, Joyce.
Joyce.
3 and 4. 3 Torvis to 3. You got it. Nope, not Chandra, not 2. 3.
Chandra.
They all wanted the pen. That's what got them. All right, 3. Yeah. So the economics behind tutoring, it is expensive. There's different models because you can have different, it depends on your group size, your frequency. It depends on how much they're paying the tutor. So there's not kind of like a going number, but I mean, done right, it's more than $1,000 a year, but we have that kind of money right now. And some of it can and should be used on tutoring.
Emily, girl, they are making it rain.
They are. I mean, it's unbelievable how much money there is. So, if you want it to be used on something that's high impact, this is something that is high impact. The challenge is going to be finding enough tutors. That is going to be the challenge. But if you can say, I want to make sure that you have a high dosage, high quality tutoring program, then there is no reason the district cannot pay for that out of the allocations that they're given.
And I know some of you guys are thinking like what I was thinking about, like having college students to do it and giving them a payment or a stipend. I think that the regulations don't allow for those students to be paid, when they're attached to the university. So I think that Dr. Swin is looking, amongst others across this country, of ways to get more tutors. And I kind of heard her talk about that. But I was thinking, like, man, we should hire college students. And then I learned from her that, there's just a lot of legalities around hiring those college students within, by their university or something.
By
like
their
that.
university,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. So, but y'all, we're going to wrap it up. We want to thank Miss Emily Freitag for this wonderful conversation. And Emily, I want to give you a chance to say any closing remarks that you may have.
I just am so happy to know Sonia. I'm so happy to know you. I'm so happy to be connected to Nashville Propel. I think you all are fighting the most important fight of our country's, of a generation of kids, and I am here with you. And so I'm just happy to be with you. And I do think my kind of summary is tutoring can make a really big difference, but you also got to have good everyday school.
Thank you so much. And you know what? That you dropped the mic on that. Like, we got to get the everyday school thing together. We cannot keep giving vitamins for the poor eating that we're getting, the poor intake. So we want to make sure that they're getting some good schooling and then getting some good tutoring. And then we got some really powerful children who reach their greatest potential. Thank you all for listening. This is recorded. So if you need to go back and you need to listen again, make sure you do. If you have any questions, like if we didn't talk about something, or answer your question, please reach out to the organizer or comment. Candace says thank you. And so I think that at the end of the summer, Emily, or the beginning of the school year, because this is our last speaker series, would you mind coming back? And
of
let's
course,
unpack the summer, maybe have some parents on and kind of talk about their experience. I just believe in just talking about lessons learned, right?
Great.
And hearing those true stories so that we can further inform like what's happening in our homes and between the schools. So thank you so much, Emily. As always.
Glad to be with you. I wish everybody a wonderful summer of learning and just a lot of love for our babies.
All right. Well, this concludes our show. Make sure you guys follow us on our Twitter, on our Facebook, and on our Instagram at Nashville Propel. And visit our website, nashvillepropel.org. Have a good night.